Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is my hairstyle of choice lately. I don't think y'all really care, but I'm just telling you. It's been up in a lot of videos lately. It's so hot and I just can't be bothered. But anyways, we are coming to you today, or I am coming to you today with a foundation review. I love foundation reviews. I have lots lined up for you. Well, I don't have lots, but I do have the new matte CC cream coming to me. I'm going to be doing one on that. Maybe a couple other ones. Anyways, foundation's my favorite category of makeup, hands down, and it's one of my favorite videos to film. So today we're going to be talking about the new Laura Geller Filter First Luminous Foundation. This launched about maybe 3 weeks ago. I got it from Laura Geller's website on the day that it launched, and she had a promotion going on that day where if you bought the foundation, you got free shipping as well as the foundation brush that is meant to go with this. So I am going to be using this in part of the demo, but it's just a regular kabuki style brush. It does have a slanted edge and it is very densely packed. There's not, well, I mean, it looks like there's give, but it's much more densely packed than some of my other kabuki style brushes. This retails for $38 for the standard 1 fluid ounce. It comes in a very dismal 12 shades. Don't understand it, but I believe that's kind of par for the course for Laura Geller foundations. I know that the Hydrating Tint Skin that I love so much comes in 3 shades. I just can't even speak to that. This is the shade Medium, which is what I wear in the Hydrating Foundation, so it's why I got it in this. You'll see it's a little bit dark for me right now, but I think I made it work. So basically it claims that it is a medium coverage formulated with a LumiSmooth technology that enhances and perfects skin without masking your overall complexion. It has micro pearls called opal light shifters, which apparently leads to the luminous effect that it claims to have. It does have grapeseed oil, aloe vera, and vitamin E. I talk about the grapeseed oil for oily skin later in the video. It does not have fragrance, but it has alcohol. And personally, I would be hard pressed for anybody to convince me that the ingredient list said that it had alcohol when I bought it. I promise you it didn't. Because honestly, I don't think I would have bought it if it did. But then when I got it home and used it a couple times, the finish reminded me so much of like the, I think it was called Magic Lumi from L'Oreal. And then Maybelline had one that kind of was on like a paddle attachment, had that very thin, dry down fast, like flawless finish, and it reminded me so much of that. Those have alcohol in it that I went back and checked the ingredients, and sure enough, alcohol. Now granted, it is, I don't know if you're gonna be able, like that is the ingredient list right there, which I'm not gonna be able to get it focused. Where my pinky is where it says alcohol. So it's very close to the bottom, which made me feel a little bit better because it's not like the third ingredient, like the new Dior Backstage or the Dior Forever or the YSL All Hours or so many other foundations that people love. It's not that far up on the list. So it made me feel a little bit better. Plus, it does not have fragrance or parabens or any of that. I've gotten to the point where I would rather, and I think I say this at the end of the video too, so sorry. I would rather it have alcohol and no fragrance than fragrance and no alcohol. I really don't like fragrance. There's too much that can be disguised under the word fragrance, and it doesn't sit well with me. It does only, from what I have found, have 3 reviews online, and that's at Ulta, even though you can get this at Laura Geller. I haven't checked Laura Geller reviews. You can get it at Laura Geller, Macy's, Nordstrom, and Ulta from what I saw, and the only reviews I've seen so far at Ulta, there are 3 reviews and they're all 5 stars. So keep that in mind. So I've gone over price, claims, size, shades, ingredients. Now let's go over how it actually works. So let's get into the demo. If you are interested to know how this new foundation works on my skin, then you just keep on watching. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the application. I have already primed my face, and today I use the Dr. Brandt Pores No More Primer, and I have done my corrector. So what I'm gonna do is do half my face with the brush that it came with, and then half of my face with the Beauty Blender so you can see the difference in application. I'm going to shake it because it does say to shake really well. It is a very thin consistency. Might be one of those no talking, not being able to talk days. It does have a pump, which I'm sure I've already told you. And I'm just going to pump out, since we're just doing one half of the face, I'm going to pump out 1 pump. So that is the shade Medium and the consistency. All right, so let's start with the brush that it came with. This is the Laura Geller brush. Does not have a name on it. I'm going to take a little bit on my fingertip. Now, what I have found with this foundation is that it dries quick. So no matter what tool you're using, I suggest you do sections of your face at a time. Okay, so this is a little bit dark for my face. It does match my shoulders and my chest. I will have to bring it down on my neck. I'm picking up a little bit off of my hand on the brush. I find that that works about the same as applying it straight to your face and then blending out with a brush, and I can't say that for all foundations. Some foundations, the brush just absorbs too much, but this one I feel like works pretty much the same. And I do like that angle of the brush so I can get next to my brows and up into my hairline, depending on how I hold the brush. Okay, so there are absolutely, let me zoom in, absolutely no streaks or anything from that brush at all. It blended out very nicely and very quickly. Again, it dried very quickly as well. And this is the side with foundation. This is the side without the foundation. So if you're new, I do have redness that comes straight down my face on both sides. I can still see a little bit of an outline of that redness right here, but this does claim to be medium coverage, and I feel like it holds true to that claim. If it was full coverage, I wouldn't be able to see that redness, but this is what I expect with the claims of medium, and I'm okay with that, especially once I get my blush and bronzer and stuff on. It's not going to be as noticeable. So I did use about that whole entire pump. Now I will say, when I pump 2 pumps, when I'm doing my whole face and I'm not doing 2 separate tools, I find that I don't need the full 2 pumps when I use a brush. I do when I use a beauty blender because it soaks up a bit more product. But when I use a brush, it's more like a pump and a half. So because I'm switching and doing 1 pump at a time, I'm probably using more than I actually need to. So keep that in mind, but I don't think it's going to affect the final look. So I'm going to take 1 more pump again, and I'm going to do the same thing, working quickly because, like I said, this does dry fast. The remnants of the first pump on my hand have already dried down. So I'm just going to blend that out with the Beauty Blender. And just like that, it's blended out. I am going to take this brush that I used just to go kind of in those spaces I couldn't get with the Beauty Blender. But another thing that I want to mention about this foundation, again, it's already almost dried down, is that with a Beauty Blender, even though it might soak up a little bit more product upon first application, I don't find that it shears it out that much. So I feel like I have pretty much the same coverage on this side of my face as I do on this side of my face. So I like that you can just pretty much use whatever product you like to use the most. Now, I will say that this has dried down enough to where I think if you have dry skin, you don't need to set it. I really do think that, I mean, it's not tacky at all. It's completely dried down on my face. And I know a lot of people, especially people with dry skin, don't like to use powder if they don't want to, and it's very rare that I find a foundation where I could genuinely say, you don't need a powder to set this. I don't think you need a powder to set this if you are a non-powder fan. That's the demo version of the video. I'm going to finish up my makeup and I'll come back to talk about my final thoughts on the foundation. Okay, so we have finished the full makeup look, and I didn't do any cream bronzers today. I really haven't been doing cream bronzer much lately. So I can't tell you how those kind of blend out over it, but I have been using the Hourglass stick highlighter, and it blends out wonderfully over it. I've used cream blush over it. They blend out good. They blend out good. Now, I didn't really talk about the finish like I should have in the demo. And I wanted to say that one of the reasons I chose to use this for the demo is because it's not a luminous primer, and I did not want to use anything luminous on the face underneath to possibly alter the finish of the actual foundation. Now, and this says it's a luminous foundation, but if you go back and look at the demo where I showed you after I applied it all over my face, I find that it was more of a natural matte foundation because of the primer that I used under it. I find that when I use a luminous primer under it, it looks more luminous. So it's kind of like works with whatever tool you want to use with it, and it also works with whatever finish you want to use with it. At least that's been my experience. So if I don't want it to be like super dewy, or if I know I'm wanting to like use a luminous powder, I will probably skip the luminous primer. Now, if I did a luminous primer and a luminous powder, it gets to be a little bit too much. So it's just kind of like, you know, you got to find what works for you, but my little bit too much may be your perfect in the amount of luminosity. So just keep that in mind. But I did want to touch on the finish. So I touched on the finish. I touched on how cream products go over it. Today I chose to set it with the Armani Neo Nude Fusion Powder, because this combination, when I was testing it, was my all-time favorite combination with the foundation. It just looked flawless all day long, and so I wanted to use that in the demo as well. So looking at my notes from when I tried it all, the longest that I wore it was 14.5 hours. And on that day, I used the Becca Backlight Primer and the Chanel Powder. And I felt like, so the Becca Backlight Primer, I don't feel like really shows through a lot of foundations. And I've heard that from some other people too, as being like, kind of, what's the point in a luminous primer when it's not going to show through? But like I said, I feel like the primer alters the actual finish of the foundation. This primer with this foundation shined through way more. Either that or it just made the foundation more luminous. Either way, I felt like I was much more luminous with this foundation and that primer than I am with that primer and any other foundation. When I used the combination I have on today, I wrote that I just had the best shine all day, which to me is just my happy medium of radiance. I don't want to be flat matte. I want to have a more radiant look, but I want it to be radiant, not oily. And with these two, it absolutely was the perfect amount of shine for me all day long. I also wore it to the gym on this day, and I felt like it held up really well. It did not come off on my forehead, which is a true test to a lasting foundation for me, because I'm not going to knock a foundation for doing that, because I sweat a lot from my hairline. But I am going to give extra points to a foundation that can hold up through that. And this did hold up through that. I used it with a Touch in Sol No Pore Blem Primer and my Hourglass Veil Setting Powder. I believe that's actually what I had on in my July favorites video, which I think went up last video, maybe? Anyhow, I felt like it was much more luminous that day. And I think it's because the No Pore Blem Primer does nothing to mattify my skin. It's not luminous, but it doesn't do anything to mattify it. And the Hourglass powder really shines my face throughout the day. Like it turns into a much more luminous powder throughout the day. So I think that that's why I was much shinier on this day than I was the other days. Again, with the tools, I find that the brush and the sponge work equally good. And I find that this brush works equally good as other brushes. I don't think it's necessary that you buy this brush with the foundation. I would not have bought it unless it came free with it that one day that I purchased it. And I'm sure that eventually QVC will maybe have a set. And in that case, there's no point in not getting it, because it's likely going to be the same price as the actual foundation. However, my other brushes worked just as well. So longevity, it lasted. I already talked about that. I'm trying to think of what I haven't touched on. Overall, I don't know that I think this is a natural finish. I do think that even though it is flawless, that it does not look as much like skin as some of my other foundations, so I don't think I would put it in a skin-like foundation category, but really that's not one of its claims. And while it doesn't necessarily look like skin, it doesn't look like a ton of makeup either. It doesn't cake up. My powder doesn't cake up on top of it. It really does something really good for my pores. I don't know what it is, but it really helps my pores like all day long. When I look at my pores at the end of the day, they're still so flawless. I mean, it really does look like a filter. And on that note, it says it's a filter flawless foundation. No filter really looks like skin. So again, you shouldn't expect this to look like skin, because that's not what they're trying to market it towards. But again, I don't feel heavy. It doesn't feel heavy throughout the day. Again, it doesn't break up. It's really, I mean, it's a very flawless wearing foundation. The only cons that I can think of, aside from the fact that it does contain alcohol, is that it does dry down so fast. And sometimes it dries down so fast that I may not blend it as properly as if I had more time, because I'm rushing so fast to try to get it blended that by the time I get to the powder step, I see some lines that it really didn't blend well, so I have to go back honestly, it's not a huge con. It's nothing I would like tell you not to get the foundation for, but it is something I think everybody needs to be aware of, that it is one of those very fast drying foundations. The color range is also a big con. I don't know that this is very forgiving in their colors, because it's not like a CC cream or a BB cream or a skin tint or anything like that. It's an actual foundation. The colors are going to be less forgiving, so you may have a harder time finding your actual color. I personally probably could even use light, because I do find it gets a little bit darker as it dries down. Not a whole shade, but maybe half a shade darker as it dries down. So I could probably even use light, and I know going into the winter I could use light or light medium, if light medium is even an option. I'm not sure. So finally I'm going to tell you who I think this is most suited for. I personally think it could work on normal to combo to even oily skins, even though I don't know. I mean, some people may be scared off because it does have oil in the formula, and it does say it's luminous when you have oily skin. But here's the thing, the way it dries down so fast, and the way that I literally don't think it needs to be set, I don't see how it couldn't work somewhat for oily skin. Now again, I don't have oily skin. I have tried this on one client since I bought it. She didn't have oily skin, so I can't really attest to what's truly going to happen when you have oily skin. It may make you look too shiny throughout the day. I can't promise, but it is something that if I personally had oily skin, I would at least try. The bad thing about that is it's not available at Sephora, and Ulta does not give samples. If you have, I don't think Nordstrom has Laura Geller either. So even though they give great samples, I don't think they have it in store. But if your Nordstrom does, or your Macy's does, maybe try to get a sample from them. So overall, I was very, very pleased with the foundation. I would give it an A++ if it didn't have alcohol in it. Because it does, I'm just going to give it an A to an A-. If they took that alcohol out, I'd be like over the moon excited about this foundation. I am glad it doesn't have fragrance in it. I'm getting to the point where I'm a little more weary of fragrance than I am alcohol in foundations. But all the same, it does have alcohol. So that's really the only reason that it's not like getting a super high ranking in my book, because I have really enjoyed this foundation. I just really think it looks flawless all day on the skin. And I hope that some of y'all will give it a try and let me know what you think, because I feel like Laura Geller is a way underrated brand. Her blushes, I have one of her blushes on today. Her highlighters, her bronzers, they're really good. And I just don't hear enough about them. The what's it called? The Quench Tint Hydrating Foundation that I put in my Best for Dry Skin. Love that. Never hear anybody talk about that. So anyways, I just think she needs a little bit more recognition than she gets. So hopefully some of y'all will be trying this foundation out. I do give it my approval. I really enjoy it. So thank you so much for watching. As always, I hope you learned something. If not, at least found it entertaining, and will subscribe and like before you leave so you don't miss out on any future content. Thank y'all so much for watching. I hope you all go out and have a very blessed day.